Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to offer testimony in regards to House Bill 7688, as the Colonel alluded to, commonly known as the red flag law. So as you probably are aware, a number of weeks ago, the Police Chiefs Association took an unusual stance when 35 police chiefs began to discuss the possibility of pushing this basic principle forward. We all exchanged examples of how we have been challenged over the years when we're faced with individuals who quite honestly should not be in possession of firearms, but there was nothing currently prohibiting them from doing so. I work in a community of 5,000 people, very small community, not one you would first come to mind when you thought of challenges with guns and possession of guns. I'm going to offer you an example of a fact pattern. An individual, a 19-year-old, posted on social media of a very clear intent, well thought out plan to commit a horrific crime against a particular population of school children in an elementary school in Jamestown. We knew that the host of that social media site notified the police, and based upon an immediate investigation, we learned that that individual had attempted to commit suicide on 2 occasions. We learned that that individual had been visiting that particular school on a weekly basis under the pretense to visit his mom, who was a part-time teacher there. We learned that that individual had made significant efforts to purchase a firearm. We learned that there was no way to determine in Rhode Island whether he was successful in that attempt or not, because there is no registry and no way of determining who possesses a firearm in Rhode Island or not. We knew that at that time there was nothing to prevent that individual from possessing a firearm, despite that fact pattern of what was displayed there. I would suggest to you that had we not taken that immediate intervention, there would have been a horrific event that we've seen in other circumstances, including the most recent in Parkland, Florida. This particular individual, at the time, willingly went to seek mental treatment at the urging of his parents, of the police. The fact is that despite those efforts, when he walked out the door of that facility, he could have went and purchased a firearm, and he could have committed that act that he had alluded to. If that itself is not alarming, some discussion about the ability for family members to petition either the court directly or through police assistance. An example, I have a resident who called me after learning about this proposal just last week. She has a 19-year-old adult son, suffers from mental illness for a number of years, been in and out of facilities. She was under the impression that the treatment that he was receiving in the facilities and the professionals involved in that would report through some process, through some federal system to prevent him from purchasing a firearm. And we know the reality is that does not exist. She was terrified to learn that her son could in fact go purchase a firearm with absolutely no restrictions as it stands today. She's terrified because her family has a history of 2 other relatives, same age group, committing suicide by a firearm. You can imagine her fear and her frustration when she learned there's absolutely nothing she could do to protect her son. More commonly, police officers face individuals in this circumstance where they are threatening suicide. We intervene. We oftentimes are able to get them maybe the mental health that they need immediately. Oftentimes they involve the threat of firearms. There's nothing that currently allows us to go back and prevent them from having that firearm, even for a brief period of time in that life, in their window of their life. There's nothing preventing us or allowing us to retain those firearms. We have to return those firearms. You can imagine how unnerving that is to make that decision to return those firearms to those individuals. So this is a small example of what happens in a community of 5,000 people. Imagine that multiplied time and time and time again as the population spreads across the state and what they face across the state in every community. So with that, we ask that, we clearly support the proposal.